All right, as we start back up again, um, I don't know if your screen looks like mine or not, but I've got this thing with the installer. Now, when you see what's here, all right, it says what do you want to do? Modify launch or more. Technically, we don't have to do any of them, but I'm just going to click the launch button. All right. This is this is what it's going to look like when we start up. All right. And mine should look just like yours, to be honest with you, because I'm doing a brand new fresh install. Now, when you look on here, we're going to talk about cloning and repositories and stuff at another time, just not today, not right now. And most of the time, what you will want to do is you'll want to choose create new project, just so you know. So we'll come up and I'm just going to show you this real quickly. And it comes up, at least on mine, and it looks like this. All right, we're going to go through what all these different things are, just so you know. All right. Are we going to use all of them? No. We'll basically use the console app that's right here that's got C# in it, and there's a Windows form in here also. And if you don't like looking through here, just so you know, you can also search up here. So if I wanted to go look for Windows Forms, notice how it brought it up right away. All right, and you don't even have to do it that way. There's more than one way of doing this. There's probably 3 or 4, or maybe even more ways of doing it, just so you know that. All right, so I'm just going to, for right now, I'm just going to stop it and leave it right there. All right, because I want to get into the chapter. I did want to mention, just so you see this, that, oh, not there. No, that's not what I want. I've already gone out here and move this up to the top, and should be done. I've got the first video that we've done this morning is already out there. All right, so this is, for lack of better words, just so you see it, it's not that big a thing. This is what they will look like, and it's my voice, and it's the computer. All right, I'm going to get started. And for those of you who are new, who just came in here, my name is Jeff Scott. I'm the instructor for the class. So I'm just going to leave it like that. I did send you earlier, all of you should have a link to my Google playlist. Otherwise, you can either email me or you can just go into YouTube. And on YouTube, you can also just type in there Jeff Scott, Rankin Technical College. See, my granddaughter was playing with a computer. That's why I got all this garbage on here. But so there it is. All right. And as it says, 103 subscribers, 1,638 videos. All right. You don't ever have to do this. People say, should I subscribe? You can if you want to. Some people never look at the stuff that's in here. I'm going to ask the people in my afternoon class, do you even want me to have this? I'm more than happy to do this and to go and tape all this stuff. All right. And people ask, they say, why do you do it? And over time, it's in some ways, it's kind of become a marketing tool. We'll have people that'll come in here throughout the semester, not as many with COVID, but they'll come in here and they're thinking of possibly going into the program. And this is one way. I mean, it's one thing for them to come in here for a half an hour, 2 hours, whatever, and talk with you. But I tell them, hey, this is a list of the classes, and here's the YouTube channel. You should always, it's a try before you buy type of thing. All right. So with that said, let's go into chapter 1. And the good news, if you'd call it that, I guess, is there's really nothing in here that you have to memorize. I do want people to understand that. It's not like, oh, you've got to know how to do this. You've got to know how to, no, not at all. All right. I've got a thing called Vital Source that they make available to educators. I wish they would to you, but it's not. And when I go to my bookshelf, should be here at least. Incorrect. Oh, great. Okay, what did I change this to? That isn't good. Oh, that's lovely. All right. That's fantastic. I'll have to go back to forgot passwords. So. And unfortunately, some of my stuff works on this machine because I'm still moving a bunch of it over, and some of it's on the other machine. That's on me. No, come on, I just put it in there. If I would have known I was going to have problems, I would have double checked and triple checked this while you were all gone. Holy moly, I just reset the password. I made it something simple that I wouldn't forget. Let's see if it's this. There we go. Okay. Sure. All right. So chapter 1 begins right at the beginning of the book, as you'd guess, and it's how to get started with Visual Studio. The first 3 chapters of the book constitute the first section of the book. Chapter 1, as it says, it's kind of a picturesque guide to the software we'll be using. Chapter 2, which we will go over tomorrow, we're going to go over 2 and 3 tomorrow. All right, hopefully we'll have the entire period. And we're going to write a bunch of code. And even if you've never written code before, I don't think you're going to have problems with it. I'm going to tell you what to type in. All right, and you're not going to turn any of it in, so it's not like there's any kind of pressure or anything like that. All right, so in chapter 1, as it says, there's an introduction to .NET development, a tour of the Visual Studio IDE. They talk about how to test and how to build a project. All right, and again, I think I've said this before, but I want to say it one more time. The pictures that are in this book are from Visual Studio 2015. The software that we're using is the latest and greatest, meaning that it's Visual Studio 2019. So they may look a little bit different. They should work virtually the same. And the major things that are in here that we'll start looking at right now, all right, they look exactly the same. Okay. All right. So the first thing they do is, just so if you didn't know this, the way that Muroc books work, I know you guys have heard this already, but every time they go over anything, on the right-hand side, it's all text. And then there's usually demos of what they're talking, on the left-hand side, I should say, is all text. And on the right-hand side, there are demos, tables and charts and whatever about the same stuff. All right, so this is the kind of thing, now you may or may not agree, but this is a simple program right here on the screen. So those of you who were in class last semester, you know how to go in and using HTML, how to do things like make a label, make a text box, make radio buttons, make regular buttons. You know how to do that. All right. Now, basically, all it's going to be is we're going to come over to here. You can't see it from here, but there's a thing called the toolbox. and you just drag the stuff right on screen, and you put it where you want to put it. All right, and that's what we're going to start doing, really more tomorrow. So when you look right here, these are radio buttons, so only one of these can be active, so either calculate the future value or calculate the monthly investment. You put in these three values, you click the button here, and you may or may not be able to tell, but this right here is a read-only field. It's grayed out. All right, why? Because if you put in $100 at 8% for 10 years, $100 a month, you get this regardless. All right, and then the exit will do just that. So we're going to start by building things like that. This is an example of, as they show down here, it's a Windows Forms app. As it says, it runs in its own window on the user's PC and consists of one or more Windows forms. It's even more than that. And what I mean is, literally, all right, what we can do is we can save every single program that we create for the entire semester, even if there's 100 of them. We can save them all in the same project. And it's really not very difficult to do. And I'm going to start showing you how to do that kind of stuff tomorrow. All right. Now, there's other things. We used to use Asp.NET Web Forms about 2 or 3 years ago here. When I taught the class, the class that you'll take, those of you third semester and fall, it changed to Asp.NET MVC. But we found out, although there are places using that, there are more and more places that are using what we're teaching in there now, that being Node.js. That's why we switched. There's also WPF, which is Windows, I think it's Presentation Foundation or something like that. And I've never worked with that at all, so I'm not even going to say anything about it. If you want more, you can get it down here. All right. So there are several languages that you can use in this framework. Maybe you noticed this, maybe you did not, but when I brought it up before, it wasn't just C# that was listed right there. All right. Up until about maybe 5 years ago, the bigger language that was used here was Visual Basic.NET. It was hotter, so to speak, than C# was. But Java kept coming on and coming on and coming on, and people realized that C# in many ways is Microsoft's answer to Java. Now, that's not exactly a fair thing to say, and I'm sure if Bill Gates was here, he'd be bopping me on the head and saying, that isn't true. Yeah, it is. All right, I teach both of them. I've taught both of them for years, and yes, it is. The transition from C# to Java or Java to C# is not a big one. All right. But these are some of the other languages that you can use in here. So we will be using Visual C#. It's normally just referred to as C#. All right. All right. And we already talked about the Community Edition, so I don't think we have to say anything about that. Now, they've got a picture here, and I'm not going to spend much time on this, but the idea is that what you've loaded right now on your machine, when we did that load before, you put a bunch of stuff in here. And the farther down that you go on this picture, the closer it is to the machine level itself. The higher up you go in the picture, the closer it is to the user level. Now, many years ago, before I came to this institution, amongst other things, I taught operating systems. And people would sometimes have a problem understanding what operating systems were. All right. So one of the things that I would do often is I would draw literally like a bullseye. And I'd say, the inner circle, that's the operating system. And the outer circle, that's the person using the machine. So what's in the middle? That's the software. And you can kind of look at it that that's sort of what we're doing. C# is kind of the thing in the middle. It's between you and the operating system. So, I mean, if you want a more detailed explanation of what's going on in here, all right, you can go and give that a read. I mean, you can go out to docs.microsoft.com, which is kind of the go-all place, all right, for everything that is .NET. All right. It used to be called MSDN, the Microsoft Developer Network, but I think now it's changed to docs.microsoft.com. All right. And again, there's some stuff in here. We could talk about the common language runtime system, etc. I don't really think it pays to do that. Like I said, to me, all right, I want to get in, start getting our hands dirty, and start writing some code. That's what this class is supposed to be about. All right. So when you bring it up and you've got the IDE here, these are a few of the things there I want to talk to you about. You'll notice when you look right here, this is literally referred to as the toolbox. All right, not the toolbar. The toolbar is technically up here. This is the toolbox. And you'll notice if you look right up here, there's a little thing there that looks like a stick pin. If that is pushed in, which is what it is right now, this stays on the screen. Sometimes you want it hidden. You just don't want to show it. And if you don't want to show it, you can click on it again and it'll be hidden. And it literally is a toggle, so it'll turn itself on and off. I believe it'll only show when you've got your GUI environment showing. So if you've got a code window up, it won't show. And so what's a code window? You're going to see that. All right. So right here, this is your GUI right here. Okay. And you'll notice this is the form, and there's a whole boatload of files that get created for you. There's very few we're going to have to deal with. But many of these files, as we bring this up and start taking a look at it, you really shouldn't touch. All right. There are certain files that the majority of these are system files, like FRM investment designer.cs. Every time you go and you pull something out on the screen, something gets added to that file. You can remove it, it'll be removed from the file, but you shouldn't go in and manually change it. Like I said, there's only about 2 or 3 files in here that you'll ever want to dink around with. And I'll show you what those are. All right. So right here again, this is the toolbox. This is your work area right here. You'll notice it's got these little things down here. You can drag, you can make this as wide as you want. So if you want a really big program, you can make that take up the whole screen if that's what you want to do. Or you can make it very small if there's only a field or two in there. All right. There's all sorts of stuff that you can do down here with these properties. You can set colors, you can set fonts, you can set styles, like making something italic, making something bold, etc. We'll take a look at all that stuff. All right. This is called the Solution Explorer, and down here, this is called the Properties window. The two of them, by default, are linked together. But all this stuff in here is dockable, meaning if you don't like where it is, you can move it anywhere on the page you want to move it. And some people, what they like to do, instead of making it vertical like this, they like to put them both down at the bottom and make them horizontal. I'm going to recommend, at least until you get comfortable with it, you leave it where it is. All right, I do. And it doesn't mean that, hey, I do it, so you should do it. No, you should do what you want to do with it. All right, it should be at your comfort level. So this Solution Explorer is kind of like your Project Explorer that you've got in Windows. And I know Mac's got something similar to it, but it's basically, it lists every single file that you've got in the program. And what you'll notice when you look in here is up on the top, it's called the Solution Explorer because you've got a solution here. And underneath this solution, you've got a project right here. You literally can have as many projects as you want to have in the same solution. So for instance, let's just assume that I had you make, I don't know, 3 different projects. One that you called homeworks, you could put all your homework in there for the entire semester. One that was called labs, you could put all your labs in there for the whole semester. And one that was called HOTS, you could put all your hands-on tests in there for the whole semester. All right. And like I said, down here, this is going to change. What's in the properties window, if I went and clicked on this calculate button right here, the stuff in here would change because it would be all the properties for that button. Right now, they've clicked on some blank space on the form, so it's showing the entire form. Not only that, you can drag down here and you can drag up and make this smaller. You can drag down and make this smaller. You'll notice that a bunch of these things here have arrows on them. When they've got the arrows that are not blackened like that, that means that they've been opened. All right. And you can open, unopen different things in here. You can rename different things in here. The best way for you to learn is to sit and play around with it. That's just what we're going to start doing. All right. And again, it's not that you have to memorize anything that's in there. I will guarantee you, you will not have a hands-on test where I'll say, hey, where's the properties window? That'd be stupid. Now, you may be asked something like that on one of the written tests. I don't remember. All right. Okay. So how the application is compiled and run. In fact, let me back up a little. You see this green thing right here? Everybody see this button where I've got the mouse going? That's your run button. You don't have to run it from there. I'd say that's where almost everybody runs it from. You can typically click build and you can click debug and you can run them from there also. But you're almost always just it's just easiest to do this. And what's going to happen is when you run it like that, all right, right now, you're in what's called design mode, which means that you're throwing stuff on there, changing stuff around, etc. When you run it, either right here or over here someplace, you'll have like a reddish square. I don't remember if this changes into that or not, or if it's over here someplace. It doesn't matter. But then you're in run mode. Okay, when you're in run mode like that, you're not allowed to go in and make changes to your program. You've got to stop the run. How do you stop the run? That reddish square, you just click on it, it gets you back into design mode. What you'll find out too, and again, we'll look at this tomorrow, is if this is in design mode, but in a second, we're going to see what it looks like in code mode when you have actual code. In code mode, if you go way over to the left-hand side right here and you click in there, it's going to put a little, they call it cyan colored dot in there. All right. And that's what's called a breakpoint, which means that when you reach that point in the program stops. So you can be either in design mode, like we are right here, run mode when you're running the program, or in break mode. All right. In break mode, typically you use that for debugging. Okay. All right. So this is what happens when you go through all this stuff. It all happens behind the scenes. And what you'll see by the end of the period tomorrow is when you get all done and you're actually got a file that you're creating, it's going to create what's called for you a bin directory. And in that bin directory, there's another directory, and inside of that directory, there's a file that's got the name of your program, .exe. That's the executable for your program. All right. You will all have at least 2 executables by tomorrow. All right. We're going to go and we're going to create a simple payroll application. We'll create it first as a console app, and then we'll go back and we'll recreate it as a GUI app, the same program, just so you can see the logic is the same, but it'll look drastically different. All right. All right. So again, if you want more, you can go ahead and take a look and take a read in there. All right. So how to start the IDE, as it says right there, when it comes up, and it doesn't look exactly like this anymore, but there's, as I mentioned to you, there's several different ways that you can start up a program. All right, that's the big thing. And we'll take a look at a couple of them tomorrow. All right. There's also, as there's several ways of opening a project, there's several ways of closing a project. All right. Remember up here before I told you that was called the Solution Explorer? Well, there is a file that gets created for your project that ends with a .sln, all right, extension. That's solution. And if you click on the .sln file, that's another way to open up a project. All right, so like I said, there's a bunch of different ways of doing it in here. And I'll probably use the same way most of the time. Just because of the fact, just because there's 5 or 6 different ways of doing it, I might show you most of them, but I'm going to do it the way that I'm comfortable doing it. And it doesn't mean that if I do something one way, you have to do it that way, and not at all. All right, try them all and see which one you like best and use that one. I mentioned a little bit about the form designer before. And again, when you look in here, it looks a little funky. It's like, why do you got this? If you take your mouse and you hold down on your left mouse button and you draw right here, you can highlight as much of this stuff as you want to highlight. It's called lassoing. That's the term that they use for it. And for instance, in this case right here, if I highlighted all of these and I got this, I could grab onto any one of these and it would change the size of all of them. You don't have to do it like that, but it's a very simple way of trying to make everything on your interface look pretty much symmetrical. All right. All right, so I already mentioned the toolbox to you. I mentioned your form designer window area. I mentioned the Solution Explorer, And the properties window, when you look up on top, as it says, there's a couple toolbars up here. There's even more toolbars than what are shown. If you actually take your mouse and you right mouse click where the toolbars are, it's going to show you a list of the toolbars. All right, you can add as many of them as you need to or want to add. All right, most of the work that you do, in fact, some of them are even duplicated. You'll see the same option in multiple toolbars. All right, so when you start writing, this is the code window right here. So you'll notice that once we did that, the toolbox is gone. As I mentioned, if you click in this gray area right here that's referred to as the gutter area, not this, but in here. So you can't do it on a blank line or on, this is called a comment, we'll go over that in a minute. But let's say that I wanted to go right here and I wanted to find out what that value is. I could click right here, I'd get one of those cyan dots. The program would then stop once I was running it when it got right there. Then I could take my mouse and literally put it right over this and it would show me its current value. One thing to realize is that line of code has not run yet. So if I wanted to see what that line was equal to, I wouldn't put the breakpoint here, I'd put it down a line or two. All right. The buttons that are over here, again, they'll make more sense when we get on tomorrow. And when we do the first program, when we do the console application, you're not going to see all this stuff. It's kind of like the difference between being in the Windows operating system and being in DOS. All right, so the stuff that we're going to be working with tomorrow, it's going to look very rudimentary. And we'll go in and we will write the program really, really simply as a console app. Then we'll make a couple changes to it just so you'll see by making a couple pretty simple changes how you can change it. Then, like I said, we'll go in and we'll convert it over into a GUI app. All right. So next they go in, they talk about the Solution Explorer. And again, I wouldn't expect you to remember all this stuff. All right. But when you look in here, I will tell you that probably 99.99% of the time you will touch nothing in here where it says references. Nothing. You'll never touch it. Those are a bunch of system files that get brought in on an as-needed type of basis. You won't touch the app config file. You will touch, or you could touch, the calculation.cs file. Any file that ends with .cs up here, you could touch. Not the designer ones, though. And this main one. And again, I've done this before, and people are like, I'm never going to remember this stuff. After you've built yourself a few projects, it becomes second nature. And the best way to learn is for us to do this tomorrow, to go over this and start doing it. And then next week, I think we've got like Monday and Tuesday are set up as lab days. All right. And the way I'm going to do this, and you guys know this, but the other ones don't, I'm going to. All right. So they say how to work with the Visual Studio Windows. Again, some of this we've already talked about. All right. And I mean, you look at this and it's like, oh my God, look at all this stuff. Yeah. But what they're showing here is these tabs. Every time you open up something, it creates a new tab here. And you can go back and forth between different tabs. You can close a tab by simply clicking the X that's up here. It doesn't hurt anything to close it. And it will ask you if you want to save, if you've made a change in that file. I will tell you this. I personally get used to clicking this right here, the double disk icon. If you click the single disk icon, it doesn't hurt a thing. But it only saves the file you're currently working on. The file you're currently working on can have one or more files in the background, system files. Clicking the single disk icon will not save changes made to the system files. Clicking that double disk icon will save everything that's been changed since the last save. All right, so that's usually the easiest way to do it. There's also a file save all, and there's some kind of a key combination like Control and S and Enter or something like that. I don't even remember what it is. But you probably already know this. The way Microsoft typically works is they give you 3 ways of doing the same thing. You can either do it using icons, You can do it using menus or keyboard combinations. And there's no advantage to using any one of those as opposed to the other one. The one you should use is the one that seems most familiar to you or seems most natural to you. All right. Now they're talking here about a floating window. So here they've grabbed the Solution Explorer and they've pulled it out. All right, I'm going to do that tomorrow just to show you how when you go back, I think it's in Tools, but we'll see. You can go back and reset it to the default. So if you set it, you don't like where it is, we can just set it back again. All right. Here, as they mentioned, the properties, it's a docked window. So it is docked right to the side right there, whereas this is floating. I mentioned the tabs to you. All right. Oh, let's see. The toolbox, you'll notice, again, here we've got it hidden. Even though we're in design mode, the toolbox is now hidden. You can do that too. How to test a project? Well, what you want to do eventually, again, here's what I showed you. See, they click the green button, and there's where that red square is. See, you are in run mode right now. You will do this tomorrow. Again, you won't turn this in. So I would really strongly suggest, especially tomorrow when we get to the GUI one, play with it. All right, take a look at it. It's kind of tough as an instructor because I'll show you a few things like how to change colors and that, and you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. Oh, change fonts. I want to do this. I want to do this. And then for a while, I kind of lose people. Why? Because it's just natural to do that. You know, I've had people do, oh, cool color. You know, and they sit there to get this big color wheel and they can change it. You know, there's millions of colors on there. All right. So they said how to build a project without running it. So if you just click build, it's going to build it. In other words, it's going to check to see if you've got any errors in it. If you do have errors, it's not shown right here, but there is an error window that will come up in here. I'm purposely, when we get to the GUI tomorrow, please remind me, I'll make errors on purpose. So you can see some of the errors that you're going to get. Everybody gets errors. All right, even on a simple program, there's probably tomorrow going to be something that I'm going to forget. Even if I had the code right next to me, there'll still be something I'll forget. A semicolon or whatever. This is going to be unlike those of you who were in the class last fall. This is very much unlike JavaScript. This is a typed language. You've got to let the system know every time you create something what type of a variable it is. Is it a number? And if it's a number, what kind of number? Is it a number that can have decimal places? Or is it a number that cannot have decimal places? Is it a Boolean, meaning it's true or false? Is it a single character value? Is it a string? All right, if you are used to from JavaScript, if you remember, strings could be in single quotes or double quotes, not here. Just double quotes. All right, but characters, so if I had a character variable I was creating for middle initial, that would have to be in single quotes. All right, and that's actually most of the variables that we're going to deal with. Most of what are called the primitive or simple type of variables. All right. Again, another way to run a project, as it says, I showed you that start button, that green button. You can also hit F5. So your F5 function key. All right. Two ways of exiting a project that's running: clicking the close button or clicking the button that's designed for exiting the application. So in other words, you can click here, but that's kind of stinks because it's final. All right. So one of the first things we're going to do, and I'm going to send you either tomorrow or Monday, a little code snippet. And I didn't write it. I found it online someplace. I got to re-find it. But what we want to do is when you click the exit button like this, is we want a window to pop up that says, are you sure you want to exit? And if you say no, then we won't exit. And if you say yes, well, we're not going to come back and say, are you really sure? No, you're going to get one chance. Because if the person accidentally clicked this, all right, maybe they didn't really mean that they wanted the program to end, or maybe if they clicked this, they really didn't mean it. They meant to click something else. And as you'd guess, for many of our programs, we'll have at least 3 buttons in there. One will be called calculate. So when we want to have something happen, we'll click the calculate button. One will be called clear. So once this gets a little bit more complex as far as the number of things we have on our screen, we can clear all those out automatically. And then one will be called exit. Now, not every program will look like that, but many of the programs that we do will look like that. All right. And they talk about how you can upgrade. That really shouldn't be an issue for us. But what they're saying is if let's say that, way back in 2015 like this, if we had written something and I want to upgrade it to 2019, there's wizards and there's other ways that you can, make the stuff more current, so to speak. All right. And we're not going to have to worry about changing the version of .NET. We want the newest. We want the latest and greatest. Why would you want to go down and get an earlier version? The only way you would want to do it is if there was something in a newer version that didn't work with something you'd already created. All right. And it is possible that something like that could happen. Not going to be very often and not really in here. Now that's it. But before I let you go, all right, we're not going to do, it says tour the Visual Studio. You don't have to do this, but you can do this. All right. And I've got to talk to Mr. Gudmested, who's my counterpart in St. Louis, and see exactly how he's doing this. I want to make sure before I put your homeworks and stuff out there, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to make us lockstep with one another. We've had several people who have left one campus and are coming to the other campus. That's happened over the years. All right, and we want to make sure that what you're learning on one campus, you're learning on the other campus. Now, what Evan has always told me is our tests have to be the same, but what we do for homework and labs do not necessarily have to be the same as long as they cover the same material. All right. All right, so when we start tomorrow, as it says, how to design a Windows Forms application, I don't even know exactly the order in which we're going to do this, but what I'm looking at probably is before we even go into this tomorrow, all right, we'll probably write a few programs together as a class. Why? Because then we're not tethered to the book and you don't have to worry about it. All right, I will make sure that tonight I write myself probably 4 different programs. And yeah, I probably will print off the actual code because it's much easier for me to do that. All right, I was telling the class last semester, maybe you remember me saying this, there's, I cover or follow a lot of people on YouTube, and there was a guy who had a whole thing in there about being an imposter. And he's a guy I watch all the time. So I thought, well, this is going to be interesting. And he said, I did this video last week and it was 32 minutes long. And everybody thought, well, that's pretty good for 32 minutes. He said, no, it took me 8 hours. He said, because I had to keep stopping my filming and starting up again. And then I made a mistake and I had to start all over again, etc. I don't want to have to do that with you. I don't mind building stuff from scratch. Not at all. I like doing that. But especially when we first get started, I'd like to have the final product there. So A, you can see what it looks like, and B, you're going to run into problems anyway as you start to create things. Everybody is. I'm going to forget things. All right. Yesterday, I was going back in my class in the afternoon. I'm going to go in, and these are, Keegan is 4th semester and Angie's 3rd semester. But we're going to go in and we're going to be talking about the Java programming language. There's going to be probably, there are some differences between C# and Java. I'm going to be doing something because we're writing programs in there today. But I'm sure that there's going to be something I'm going to do that's C# specific that Java doesn't allow you to do. It's just natural when you start going back and forth. Now, when I was teaching in Wisconsin, the way that it was taught was much different there. The classes met for 2 hours at a time. So, every one of our classes were 2 hours, all right, but they only met twice a week. So literally there were semesters, I had 11 classes, where now I've got 2, all right, and it was a big difference coming here, all right, and having that difference, having people here every day. I like the way they do it better here, all right, because that was always my complaint where I was you probably have heard this saying before that they were, what is it? How you were miles wide and inches deep, because they learned all sorts of stuff, but they never got to really learn a lot about anything. Well, when you look at what's in this book, we're going to be going through the majority of the stuff that's in there, not everything. Now, my hope is, and I didn't tell you this before, but I just wanted to show you this. My hope is that around the break, which is the end of March, we're literally going to be done with 1, 2, and 3, 4 through 11, 12 through 16, and we're going to be about here. All right. Why? Because after the break, I want to spend 2 or 3 weeks going over databases and not worrying a thing about what's in the book. Just showing you databases so you can learn to understand them. All right. But really, up until about that point, everything that we do, all the programs that we do, will not persist. So in other words, you'll create a program, you run it, you get, yeah, I got the right output, etc. But when you stop the run, you bring it up again, you got to run it all over again. All right. Databases either using databases or regular files allow you to persist. That's what we want to get to. You have to understand databases. One place I think I'm different than Evan is I think I spend more time on databases than he does. And I know that when they get Paul, Mr. Smith, and Paul, I mean, you talk about a guy who just like knows everything. All right. But he spends a lot of time with them going through a lot of the same stuff I'm going to be going through with you. All right. And it's never hurts, and we will go back and we will review a bunch of stuff. Those of you who are in that class in fall, the Node.js class. All right. And just so I told you, like I said, I want to make sure I didn't forget about certain things. Now, I don't want to embarrass anybody in here, so I'll grab Angie's. Oh, where is it? Let's see. December? No. All right. Well, Aaron, you bring yours up. Hopefully that's okay. And I'm going to, oops. And so at the end of every semester, everybody has to create an electronic portfolio. All right. Why? Because what we're finding is more and more today, especially in this field, a lot of companies, it's not enough to just show a resume. They want examples of your work. All right. And there's, it's very free format as far as how you do it. Now, you notice how his is. Get started, click here. There he is. And hope I'm not embarrassing you. Sorry. There's his resume. I mean, you did a nice job on this. Okay. There's his resume. There's the portfolio where he's got examples of his work, and you can click on things and bring these things up. There's even a contact in here. All right. And when you do this, there's actually 2 ways that you can do it. Now, for those of you who are new people, if you're like, I don't know how to do that stuff, I didn't take that class yet. I'm going to show you software where it's literally 100%, if you want it, drag and drop. All right. And that I would almost recommend, since you haven't had the HTML and the CSS and the stuff that you'll get in full, that you do it that way. If you have had experience with it, maybe on your own, or maybe you've gone to another school or whatever. Or a lot of people today, some of the students that I'm getting have had it in high school. That's fine too. All right. So again, I do want you to realize, like I said, tomorrow, as they say, is, what do they call that? The beginning of the journey, or whatever you want to call it. All right. And it's just going to be a start. All right. And so we will go over how to design a Windows Forms app and how to code and test. But it's also important that we go over console apps. And the reason that it's important that we go through console apps is virtually everything that we're going to do in here, 4 to 11, virtually everything we do in there will be GUI, graphical apps. When we get down to object-oriented, notice Chapter 12 here says how to create and use classes. Classes, when you write a class, it's all code. There's no GUI to a class. It's 100% code. If you go, that doesn't make sense. It shouldn't if you're on the first day, and that's in Chapter 12. But what I'm trying to tell you is you'll have to go back to those console roots when we get to that point. there are people who have made successful careers, and basically they do a bunch of stuff and they do console apps almost all the time. All right. So like I said, tomorrow we will go through both of these, and I want to go back also. Hopefully I still have that up someplace. There it is. So, today what did we do? We went through all of this stuff, and I want to make sure that we go through this. Again, for the three of you, if you don't have GitHub accounts, please try to get one by tomorrow. And I'm going to show you a few commands just to get you started. All right. So we went through Chapter 1. We completed Chapter 1. It says develop console apps. Well, we're going to do that tomorrow because I didn't think that you guys would be gone as long as you were gone. All right. But I knew it'd probably be a couple hours. So tomorrow, as it says, we'll do Chapter 2 and we'll do Chapter 3. Now, when you look over here, it says Chapter 1, the written test and the homework and labs. Tomorrow is Chapter 2, the written test. I have to get all that stuff for you. All right. And what I want to do is probably put it all out there electronically where you can all get to it. I don't want to be having to worry about having a lot of paper and stuff. All right. But a couple of things. As it says here, this work ethic grade, you get one of these every 20 days. Now, I didn't do it much with you guys last semester, but I'm going to go back to it. So every 20 days, what we're going to do is I'm going to pick a day when there's no one in that conference room that's across the hall and a little bit down, and I'm going to bring you in one at a time. And I'm going to say, Christopher, this is where you stand right now. This is a list of all your grades. This is a list of your attendance. And I'm going to do that for every person. I don't want there to be any surprises for any of you. All right, so we will do that. As it says here, throughout the semester, your one lowest grade will be automatically dropped, and that is true, but there are certain grades that we don't drop. For instance, you have to do the portfolio at the end of the semester. And I can't say, well, you didn't do it, so I'm just going to drop that one. No, because that is a requirement for the class. All right, but we will drop your lowest test grade or assignment grade. So my hope is by tomorrow, I will be able to give you all that stuff. All right, for chapters 1 through 3. And notice as of right now, it's due 1/15/21. I don't think if you don't have the book yet, all right, if you don't, I will, is there any of you guys, and you four here that don't have the book that you can go out to Murach's site, murach.com, MURACH.com. That's where I got what I gave to you guys on that flash drive. They've got Chapter 2 and Chapter 3 are both out there in PDF format. All right, I even looked for pirated versions of the book yesterday trying to find Chapter 1, and I couldn't find any. Murach does a really good job of not letting people pirate their stuff. All right, so that'll be tomorrow. And then notice Monday, we've got lab the entire period. Tuesday, we've got lab the entire period. And what I'm going to do, I've got it down for every one of these, and we'll see how it works, is on Wednesday, I'm going to give you a pretest. What that means is I'm going to give you a test before the test. You don't turn it in. I don't want to see it. But it'll be very similar to the actual test you will take. And I will give you 2 to 2.5 hours to work on it, and then I will go over it and I'll show you what I did. I can't think of a better way to prepare you more for actually taking the test the following day. So then Thursday will be, a week from today will be our first test on chapters 1, 2, and 3. All right. And then Friday, we're going to go into Chapter 4 already. Now, it might seem like, man, you're really whipping through this stuff fast. It'll slow down. But you have to get those foundations and those fundamentals. That's why, like I said, we'll work on it together as a class tomorrow. You'll have time on Monday and time on Tuesday to work on it yourselves. And with that said, you have a question, just ask. I know you hear all that stuff, and this is me sounding like, yeah, you sound like a teacher now. But there aren't dumb questions. There really are not. And if you raise your hand, you go, I know this is really stupid, but now everybody wants to hear what you say. All right, so if that's the case, just raise your hand. I'll walk over there and help you. All right, it shouldn't be that big of a thing. Like I said, I don't know if and or when Jameer is coming back. We have 7 right now. Technically, we have 8 in the class. All right, is there anything that I went over today that anybody has any questions on? Anything? It's your chance to ask. All right. So if you, yes, sir.
How similar is the stuff to Python?
How similar is it to Python? The biggest difference in Python is in here, when you end a line, you put a semicolon at the end, all right? And it's very free format with how you put stuff on a page, etc. With Python, it's all tab delimited. But the logic, when you learn the logic for one programming language, you know the logic for most programming languages. So what's going to be different is the syntax. All right.
I learned PyCharm
Okay.
in high school, my senior year.
Yeah.
And I kind of know a decent amount from that.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Well, then when we get to the using the logic and stuff, that'll probably help you. Yeah. And if you don't know it, again, if you're walking in here off the street and you've had no programming experience whatsoever, it's not that it's going to hurt you. All right. And like I said, I always use this as a symbol or whatever, and people think I'm trying to be funny. I'm not. Your first test that you take next week won't be, you have 4 hours, solve world hunger. It's not, we don't do stuff like that. All right. Most of the tests will have either one problem, some will have 2 problems. I don't think there's many with more than that on there. And one thing that we've done, and we basically I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but we're made to do it here, is every time you take a test, a hands-on test, you'll have a listing of how many points everything in there, each thing that's in there is worth. All right. So you will know. So it's like, geez, I've been spending an hour on this. Oh, it's only worth 2 points. You probably shouldn't spend an hour on it then. All right. Okay. So like I said, then the next week, you've got an idea of even where we'll be there. Chapter 4, and then notice we've got no class, like I said, a week from Monday. All right. And then we're going to jump right into Chapter 5. And then there's a test just on those 2 chapters. So yeah, there's a test on 1 to 3. What could I test you on from what we did today? Not really very much. We haven't written any code yet. Chapters 2 and 3 are all about writing code. All right. And it is 10 minutes early, but especially for those of you who had to sit here for 2 hours waiting for them, just for today at least, you're welcome to take off. All right.